That sinking feeling, the heat rising in your face the moment you realize your firmly held belief, your confident assertion, is fundamentally flawed. We've all been there. It's the sting of intellectual exposure, the quiet embarrassment of being demonstrably wrong. This universal human experience feels like failure, like a verdict on our intelligence. But what if this intensely uncomfortable sensation isn't an endpoint but a doorway? Why does being proven wrong cut so deep? It challenges our sense of self, our perceived competence, and can even strain our connections with others. We build defenses, rationalize, or retreat, desperate to avoid that feeling again. Yet this avoidance might be costing us more than we realize. It could be walling us off from deeper understanding, faster learning, and a more authentic connection to the world and the people around us. Ancient philosophers, wrestling with the fundamental questions of knowledge and existence, grappled intensely with this very human predicament. They didn't just acknowledge error. Some actively sought it out, understanding its paradoxical power. From the bustling agora of Athens to the quiet contemplation of later thinkers, a counterintuitive wisdom emerged. The path to genuine insight isn't paved with unbroken certainty, but often winds through the terrain of acknowledged mistakes. This isn't merely about softening the blow of being wrong or developing coping mechanisms. It's about fundamentally reframing the entire experience. What if acknowledging ignorance wasn't a sign of weakness, but the very foundation of intellectual strength? Could embracing the possibility that any of our beliefs might be mistaken actually make us sharper, more open-minded, and ultimately more effective thinkers and learners? Prepare to journey through centuries of philosophical thought, exploring how the acceptance of fallibility can transform intellectual discomfort into a powerful catalyst for self-improvement. We will uncover the wisdom of Socratic ignorance, the pragmatism of fallibilism, and the profound strength found in intellectual humility. Our journey starts in ancient Athens with Socrates, a figure whose influence echoes through millennia. Accused of corrupting the youth and impiety, his defense, as chronicled by Plato, rested on a peculiar claim. The oracle at Delphi had declared no man wiser than Socrates. Puzzled, Socrates embarked on a quest, questioning politicians, poets, and artisans, those reputed to possess great wisdom. What Socrates discovered was startling. The politicians, though masters of rhetoric, lacked true understanding of concepts like justice. The poets created beautiful works through inspiration, but couldn't rationally explain their meaning. The artisans possessed practical skills, but mistakenly believed their technical expertise extended to wisdom about life's most important matters. Through these encounters, Socrates arrived at his famous conclusion: "I know that I know nothing." This wasn't a statement of nihilism or absolute skepticism. Rather, it was a profound recognition of the limits of his own knowledge, especially concerning the highest moral and existential truths. Unlike those he questioned, Socrates was aware of his ignorance. Socratic ignorance offers the first crucial step in reframing our relationship with being wrong. When we admit we don't have all the answers, being corrected is no longer an attack on our identity but a valuable opportunity to learn. It shifts the focus from defending a position to pursuing understanding. This Socratic principle resonates deeply with a later philosophical stance known as fallibilism, championed by thinkers associated with pragmatism, like Charles Sanders Peirce, and later emphasized by Karl Popper in the philosophy of science. Fallibilism is the understanding that no belief, no matter how firmly held or seemingly supported by evidence, can ever be considered absolutely certain. Fallibilism doesn't mean we should descend into radical doubt about everything. We can still have very well-justified beliefs based on strong evidence and reasoning. However, it cultivates a crucial attitude: openness to the possibility of error. It recognizes that the history of thought, science, and culture is littered with discarded certainties. What was once considered undeniable truth is now seen as mistaken. Consider the scientific method, as articulated by Karl Popper. Popper argued that scientific theories can never be definitively proven true, only falsified. Progress comes not from confirming theories, but from rigorously attempting to disprove them. Theories that withstand repeated attempts at falsification are considered stronger, but never absolutely final. How does embracing fallibilism change our experience of being wrong? It fundamentally alters the stakes. If all knowledge is provisional, then discovering an error in our beliefs isn't a personal failing. It's an inherent part of the knowledge-seeking process. It's like a scientist finding data that contradicts a hypothesis. It's not a disaster, but valuable information guiding future inquiry. Together, Socratic ignorance and fallibilism form the bedrock of intellectual humility. This isn't about false modesty or lacking confidence. Rather, it's an accurate assessment of one's cognitive limitations and a corresponding openness to learning from others and from experience. It's the recognition that our perspective is inherently limited, shaped by our unique history, culture, and biases. Intellectual humility acts as an antidote to cognitive biases that often lead us astray. Confirmation bias, for instance, makes us seek out information confirming our existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. The Dunning-Kruger effect describes how incompetence can mask itself, leading the least knowledgeable to be overly confident. This humility is crucial for effective critical thinking. Critical thinking isn't just about finding flaws in others' arguments. It's primarily about rigorously examining our own assumptions, biases, and reasoning. It requires the courage to question our foundational beliefs and the willingness to change our minds when confronted with compelling evidence or logic. Think about the most productive conversations or debates you've witnessed or participated in. They likely involved participants who were willing to concede points, acknowledge counter-evidence, and genuinely consider alternative perspectives. This requires intellectual humility. Conversely, debates fueled by rigid certainty and ego defense rarely lead to insight or resolution. They become performances of conviction rather than collaborative searches for truth. These philosophical ideas find a powerful echo in modern psychology, particularly in the concept of the growth mindset, popularized by researcher Carol Dweck. A growth mindset contrasts with a fixed mindset. Individuals with a fixed mindset believe intelligence and abilities are static traits. Therefore, mistakes indicate fundamental inadequacy. They avoid challenges and feel threatened by the success of others. Conversely, those with a growth mindset believe abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. They see challenges as opportunities to learn, setbacks as chances to improve, and criticism as valuable feedback. Mistakes aren't shameful. They are integral to the learning process. This aligns beautifully with the philosophical perspectives we've explored. Embracing Socratic ignorance, fallibilism, and intellectual humility naturally cultivates a growth mindset towards knowledge and understanding. When we adopt this philosophical and psychological orientation, the benefits ripple outward. The first major advantage is accelerated learning. If you aren't afraid of making mistakes, you're more willing to try new things, ask stupid questions, and push the boundaries of your current understanding. Errors, when viewed non-judgmentally, provide precise information about what needs adjustment. Another significant benefit is increased open-mindedness. Truly internalizing fallibilism means you approach new ideas and perspectives with genuine curiosity rather than immediate dismissal. If you accept that your own beliefs might be flawed, you become more receptive to hearing why others believe differently. This doesn't mean abandoning your principles, but it does mean engaging with opposing views more charitably and being willing to revise your stance based on reason and evidence. Embracing fallibility naturally strengthens critical thinking skills. When you constantly hold your own beliefs up to scrutiny, questioning your assumptions and seeking counterarguments, you develop sharper analytical abilities. You become better at identifying logical fallacies, evaluating evidence, and constructing sound arguments, not just for persuading others, but for refining your own understanding. The habit of self-correction is the engine of intellectual growth. Perhaps one of the most profound benefits is reduced ego defensiveness. When your self-worth isn't tied to always being right, challenges to your ideas feel less like personal attacks. You can engage in discussions more calmly and objectively, focusing on the substance of the arguments rather than protecting your ego. This liberation from the need to be infallible allows for more honest and productive interactions. Consequently, this philosophical shift can significantly improve relationships. Admitting mistakes, apologizing sincerely when wrong, and listening openly to different perspectives fosters trust and mutual respect. People are more likely to connect with someone who demonstrates humility and a willingness to learn than with someone who insists on their own correctness at all costs. So how can we actively cultivate this joy of being wrong, this transformative philosophical perspective in our daily lives? It requires conscious effort and practice. The first step is to actively cultivate curiosity. Approach situations, especially disagreements or moments of confusion, with a genuine desire to understand, rather than an immediate impulse to assert or defend. Ask open-ended questions. Wonder, what if I'm missing something, instead of assuming you have the complete picture. Secondly, actively seek feedback, even when it might be uncomfortable. Ask trusted friends, colleagues, or mentors for their honest perspectives on your ideas or work. Frame it not as seeking validation, but as seeking opportunities for improvement. When receiving criticism, try to listen for the underlying message without immediately becoming defensive. Thank the person for their input, even if you don't ultimately agree with all of it. Practice reflecting on your errors non-judgmentally. When you realize you've made a mistake, whether factual, logical, or interpersonal, take a moment to analyze it objectively. What was the error? What led to it? What can be learned from it? Treat it like data. Avoid harsh self-criticism or rumination. The goal isn't self-flagellation, but understanding and adjustment. Keeping a journal where you note down mistakes and the lessons learned can be a powerful tool for this process. Reframe your internal narrative. Instead of thinking, "I was wrong, therefore I'm inadequate," try thinking, "I discovered something new," or "my understanding has been updated." Celebrate the learning that comes from mistakes. Acknowledge the progress made when you correct a misconception. This shift in self-talk gradually changes the emotional association with being wrong, transforming it from a negative event to a positive step in your intellectual journey. Engage with diverse perspectives deliberately. Read books, articles, or listen to podcasts from authors and thinkers who hold different views from your own. Don't just seek to refute them. Try to genuinely understand their reasoning and the evidence they rely on. This practice stretches your intellectual empathy and reinforces the fallibilist understanding that reasonable people can arrive at different conclusions. Practice the principle of charity in discussions. When encountering an argument you disagree with, assume the other person is rational and try to interpret their position in its strongest possible form before criticizing it. Avoid straw-manning or misrepresenting their views. Engaging with the best version of an opposing argument not only shows respect, but also provides a more rigorous test for your own beliefs. Distinguish between the person and the argument. Remember that criticizing an idea is not the same as attacking the person holding it. Similarly, when your own ideas are challenged, try to detach your ego from the specific point being debated. Focus on the merits of the arguments and evidence. This separation makes it easier to accept being wrong about a particular issue without feeling diminished as a person. It preserves intellectual honesty and maintains respectful discourse. Embrace complexity and nuance. Resist the urge for easy answers or black and white thinking. Many important issues are multifaceted, with valid points on multiple sides. Acknowledging this complexity makes you less likely to cling rigidly to one viewpoint and more open to modifying your understanding as you learn more. Accepting ambiguity is a sign of intellectual maturity, closely linked to the humility of recognizing that complete certainty is often unattainable. Consider the role of emotion in belief. Sometimes, we hold onto beliefs not because of strong evidence, but because they feel comfortable, align with our identity, or provide emotional security. Recognizing the emotional component of our convictions can help us evaluate them more objectively. When faced with evidence that contradicts a cherished belief, ask yourself, am I resisting this because of the evidence, or because it feels emotionally threatening to let go? This self-awareness is key. Develop comfort with uncertainty. The pursuit of knowledge is often a journey into the unknown. Fallibilism reminds us that we must navigate this journey without the guarantee of reaching an infallible destination. Learning to tolerate ambiguity and the provisional nature of understanding reduces the anxiety associated with being wrong. Remember the purpose. The joy in being wrong isn't about reveling in failure itself, but in what failure enables: learning, growth, correction, and a closer approximation to truth. It's the joy of shedding a misconception, like removing ill-fitting armor. It's the pleasure of discovery, even when that discovery involves realizing a previous error. It's the satisfaction of prioritizing intellectual honesty and progress over the static comfort of assumed correctness. This joy is subtle but profound. This philosophical approach offers a powerful counter-narrative to societal pressures that often equate being right with being smart or successful. In many environments, admitting error is penalized, fostering cultures of defensiveness and hindering collective progress. Let's synthesize the core philosophical pillars supporting this transformative view. Socratic ignorance teaches us that wisdom begins with recognizing the vastness of our own unknowing. It frees us from the burden of pretending to have all the answers and opens the door to genuine inquiry. Being wrong in this light is simply encountering the edge of our current understanding, a necessary prerequisite for expanding that edge. It's not an end point, but a starting line for deeper exploration. Fallibilism builds upon this foundation by asserting the inherently provisional nature of all human knowledge. It reminds us that even our most strongly supported beliefs could potentially be overturned by future discoveries. This understanding detaches the ego from specific beliefs, making it easier to revise or discard them when necessary. Intellectual humility emerges as the essential virtue integrating these perspectives. It is the disposition to accurately assess one's own cognitive limitations and biases, fostering openness to learning from mistakes and from others. This humility isn't weakness. It's the strength to prioritize truth over ego, understanding over certainty. It fuels the critical thinking necessary to challenge our own assumptions and the empathy required for productive dialogue. Connecting these philosophical tenets to the growth mindset reinforces their practical application. Viewing intelligence and understanding not as fixed entities, but as capacities that can be developed changes our entire relationship with challenge and error. Mistakes become data points for learning, effort becomes the path to mastery, and feedback becomes a gift. The initial question, why does being wrong feel so bad, finds its answer in ego, social conditioning, and a fixed mindset. We tie our self-worth to being correct, fear social judgment, and interpret errors as signs of permanent inadequacy. Philosophy offers the antidote. By cultivating Socratic awareness, embracing fallibilism, practicing humility, and fostering a growth mindset, we untangle our identity from the need to be infallible. The journey towards finding joy in being wrong is ongoing. It requires consistent practice in cultivating curiosity, seeking feedback, reflecting non-judgmentally, and engaging charitably with differing views. It's about building new cognitive habits. There will still be moments of discomfort, but they become less debilitating and more informative. The underlying feeling shifts from shame towards a quiet satisfaction, the satisfaction of knowing you are committed to growth and truth above all else. Think of the greatest scientific breakthroughs or artistic innovations. Many arose from unexpected results, failed experiments, or the willingness to abandon long-held assumptions. Error, when interrogated and learned from, is often the very engine of progress. By embracing this process in our own lives, we align ourselves with the fundamental dynamic of discovery that drives human understanding forward. We participate more fully in the collective human project of figuring things out. Consider the alternative: a life spent rigidly defending every belief, avoiding challenges and fearing exposure. Such a life might feel safe in the short term, but it is intellectually stagnant. It closes off avenues for growth, limits understanding, and can lead to brittle relationships built on pretense rather than authenticity. The discomfort of occasionally being wrong is a small price to pay for the richness and dynamism of a life committed to learning and intellectual honesty. In summary, the philosophical path transforms being wrong from an indictment into an invitation to learn, to refine, to grow. Socratic ignorance grounds us in humility. Fallibilism prepares us for the provisional nature of knowledge. Intellectual humility guides our interactions and inquiries. The growth mindset empowers us to see errors as stepping stones. Key takeaway 1. Recognize the limits. True wisdom starts with acknowledging what you don't know, Socratic ignorance. This awareness diffuses the ego's defensiveness when errors are pointed out, framing correction as a learning opportunity rather than a personal failing. Embrace the vastness of the unknown as a field for exploration, not a source of shame. Key takeaway 2. Embrace provisionality. Understand that all knowledge is potentially fallible and subject to revision. This fallibilist perspective frees you from the need for absolute certainty and makes you more open to new evidence and alternative viewpoints. See your beliefs as hypotheses to be tested and refined, not dogmas to be defended at all costs. Key takeaway 3. Cultivate humility and growth. Practice intellectual humility by actively seeking feedback, questioning your own assumptions, and engaging charitably with others. Combine this with a growth mindset, viewing challenges and errors as essential for development. This synergy turns mistakes from roadblocks into fuel for intellectual and personal evolution. Ultimately, the unexpected joy of being wrong is the joy of learning itself. It's the thrill of discovery that comes when a flawed belief gives way to a more accurate understanding. It's the liberation felt when the ego's need to be right yields to the mind's desire to know. It requires a shift in values, prioritizing the dynamic process of inquiry over the static state of supposed certainty. It's choosing curiosity over comfort. So the next time you encounter that familiar sinking feeling of realizing you are mistaken, pause. Remember Socrates, fallibilism, and the power of a growth mindset. Instead of succumbing to embarrassment or defensiveness, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How does this refine my understanding? Can I embrace this moment not as a failure, but as a necessary, even valuable step on the endless path toward wisdom? The choice and the potential joy is yours.